Hello and welcome to our latest Muscular Dystrophy UK podcast series, Our Muscles Matter. I'm Becca and I'm your podcast host for today. If you've listened to our last few episodes, you know I work at MD UK as the Stories Officer and I live with SMA Type 2. Most of us like to get away on holiday, particularly at this time of year, and the next few months are the busiest time in the travel calendar. However, travel and living with a muscle wasting condition or other disabilities is definitely not straightforward. There are benefits to health and well-being, but also challenges to overcome. I love going on holiday, and I'm currently counting down the days till my trip to Lanzarote. Today I'm joined by two well-travelled guests who have visited countries all around the world. We'll be discussing what inspires us to travel and offering up tips, advice and learnings from our own experiences of holidaying with a muscle wasting condition. I don't want to keep my guests waiting any longer, as I know you'll be keen to hear from them, so let's get going. My first guest is Ross. Hi Ross, would you like to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Ross, and I'm 45. I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2, and I require full-time support from either one or two PAs, depending on what I'm up to. And I work full-time for a large bank in the UK. When I'm not doing that, the two favourite things to do are follow my football team home and away or go on a very hot overseas holiday, which usually involves some kind of long haul flight.
Awesome. Thanks Ross, great to have you here. And my second guest is Davey.
Thank you.
Hi David, please do you want to tell our listeners about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Davey. I am 28 years old and I'm a respiratory physiotherapist from Croydon. I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, myyoshi myopathy type muscular dystrophy, when I was 19 years old, just before starting university. I was very active growing up into running, cricket, football, all of that. And my mobility started to change in my later teenage years. Currently, I use a walking stick, sometimes two walking sticks, but I am absolutely passionate about travel. I travel as often as my annual leave and finances allow. Uh, Currently, I've visited around just over 60 countries. I'd love to be the first person with muscular dystrophy to visit every country in the world.
Amazing, definitely in well experienced company. If we start with you, Ross, do you want to tell us a little about what you enjoy most about travelling and some of your favourite places you visited?
Yeah, sure. So I think, as I sort of mentioned in my introduction, I'm in my mid 40s, and what I used to enjoy about traveling and what I enjoy about traveling now are two different things. So I think in my late 20s, it was all about going away with my friends and visiting those hip places and drinking and going to nightclubs and doing all the typical things that young lads do when they go on holiday together. And then I think as I started to do all right in life at work, my choice of holidays was about maybe experiencing the kind of like the wonders of the world or the big places. So, I don't know, New York, Vegas, etc., etc. I think now, although I did have a conversation with my PA about this morning, so I will finish on that in a moment about my contradiction of what I'm about to say. But I think now, for me, what I enjoy most about going on holiday is the break from what I would call the disability life admin and work. And for me, it's about knowing that I'm somewhere for whether that's 7 days or 14 days. I don't have to worry about a carer handover. I don't have to worry about going to work, getting up at a set time. It's just that very selfish me time to just chill out and relax. And I guess linking into the favorite places part, I've become a bit of a you could argue boring and the complete opposite of David of going to the same place for the last few years over and over again on repeat because familiarity is really easy to not have to plan and knowing what the bathroom's going to be like, knowing what the transfer is going to be like,
Mm.
knowing how long the flight is and where I'm going, where the dropped curves are, and all those things that when you go somewhere for the first time, you learn about and waste loads of time on holiday because nothing's straightforward. So my favourite places to go very much rinse and repeat. I'm a big fan of Dubai. I've been there about maybe 20 times in the last 12 years.
Wow.
And most recently, I've found an accessible villa in Spain that a chap who's a paraplegic owns, and it's kind of kitted out very similar to somebody with kind of spinal muscular atrophy or muscular dystrophy would need to use, and a villa in America in Florida I go to quite regularly. The contradictory bit that I was just about to finish on. So I just recently got back from California. I went to the spinal muscular atrophy Cure SMA conference. That was the prime reason for going to California, but I also wanted to go and see Los Angeles and some of the sites there. And that was obviously completely uncharted territory for me. So a new hotel, new location, and actually it was also the first time that I went away with two personal assistants, and the difference that made was huge, and it's kind of given me the confidence to maybe explore. And while I was working from home this morning with Calvin Harris on in the background, I was thinking, do you know what? I'm maybe not too old to go to Ibiza. Maybe I should go to Ibiza next year for a weekend. So yeah, that's probably a little bit about what I do, where I wanted to go, where I go now, and maybe what the future holds.
Yeah, amazing. You should definitely do that. And Davey, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I love, for example, meeting new people when traveling, experiencing new cultures, trying new food. I love cities, I love nature, I love very interesting parts of traveling. I like really boring parts of traveling. I quite enjoy fussing around airports. I love waking up early for flights. I love going on Google Maps at home and going on Street View. And I think that's what travel for me really is. I think travel very much starts at home. It can be from like exploring your local area, meeting neighbors that are, for example, from a different culture, country to you, and if they're happy to share about that culture, I think that really inspires me to travel anyway. And I've had so many experiences in different countries that I'm able to kind of bring back to kind of where I live, my local community, my local church community, for example. But yeah, I love weekends away. I love more longer haul places. So some of my favorite places I've been to, I was lucky enough when I was in university to live in the Netherlands. I think Netherlands is such a wonderful country. I lived in Amsterdam for 5 years, and through that I was able to do an internship in Ghana for 10 weeks. And just the natural beauty of Ghana, the people of Ghana, the food in Ghana was just awesome. Yeah, so that I would say is a travel experience that I really enjoyed. If that answers your question.
Amazing. I wonder how many countries between all three of us we've been to. I love myself. I love traveling abroad. I think I've been traveling abroad since I was maybe 13, but up until then, my parents were always quite nervous around flying with me in a wheelchair. I also have sorry, I also have two younger siblings, which obviously when we were all sort of under the age of 13 would have been quite a handful
Mm.
to go abroad with regardless of disability. So we did a lot of UK travel when I was younger, and we did things like the Lake District, Devon, Cornwall. We loved going to Centre Parks. I think a bit like what you were saying, Ross, about the rinse and repeat. My family very much liked that motto, where there was no concerns and no worry. So I think for 7 years in a row, maybe we went to Centre Parks because it was just somewhere that we loved. There was something for everybody. And yeah, so I'm 26 now. My siblings are both now adults. And last year, all five of us went back to Centre Parks for sort of one last time as a sort of memory type thing. So yeah, I think there's there's things I love about UK and abroad travel. Um, so if we sort of think about traveling to different countries, meaning using different types of transport, can we think about like sharing tips and advice for our listeners on how you navigate this? Davey, should we come back to you first?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a big part of the way that I travel has been using public transport. Now, obviously, public transport varies hugely from country to country. There are countries that are far surpass the UK in terms of accessibility. For example, I was in Singapore last month, and there's not a step in the entire country. If you want to visit a country without having to do a single step, go to Singapore. However,
Noted.
yes, however, some other countries, um, for example, wouldn't even have escalators in their metro stations. Um, I'm just trying to think. There are a few. Obviously, London is, I'd say, one of the worst underground systems in the world in terms of accessibility, just because it was so old. And if you think about one of the busiest tube stations, Oxford Street, that doesn't have step-free access. And also Paris. I think Paris has quite a way to go. Um, but the thing to do, of course, is just research, research, research. Google Street View is one of the best resources I use to travel. So if I'm looking at a place, I do look at the metro stations, the closest bus stations, how close everything is to uh, do your hotel to the main sites. And if you have to find a way around that, before you go, look up the local taxi apps. Not everywhere uses Uber. It might be Bolt or some other local thing. So, making a good use of your time beforehand to do the research of public transport as well as those taxi apps if you really need that. But generally speaking, in Europe, trams are great, trains are generally okay. Um, and yeah, taxi apps if you must.
Great, yeah, thanks for that. I definitely agree with the Paris underground system. That's interesting. And Ross, how about you in terms of flying and things like that?
Yeah. So I when I go when I do take holiday, I rarely go away in the UK. If I'm gonna take some time off work, I want to go and chase the sun. And often the only way you can guarantee that is to go somewhere hot. So I fly a lot. And interestingly, yesterday I was on a call with a disabled colleague at work who was asking me for some help regarding something. But he said, "Oh, how was your recent holiday?" And he said, "How do you manage going to the bathroom on the plane?" I was like, "I don't." So I guess kind of he was like, "Wow, that puts me off. I couldn't do it. I can only manage an hour long flight." So I think yeah, I do fly. I do long haul. It's not easy. I've got certain airlines that I trust and I know we're not here to promote them, so I won't say their names, but there's a certain airline that I regularly fly with more than I fly with others. But also, um, there's lots of facets to this particular question. So, I think in terms of flying, obviously the biggest challenge for people, if you're unaware of this, for wheelchair users and people with neuromuscular conditions like spinal muscular atrophy and muscular dystrophy, is we just can't stay in our wheelchairs on the plane. In fact, the amount of able-bodied people who say to me, "Do you go on your wheelchair on the plane?" And you're like, "Have you ever seen a plane with a wheelchair on it? Like, why are you asking me this question?" Like, anyway, the answer is we can't. So we obviously have to get transferred. So there's the risk of our wheelchair getting damaged. There's the fact that we get lifted into a seat. So you've got the risks of the transfers. Again, one of the reasons I rinse and repeat and go to certain places that a certain airline flies from a certain airport is they have a thing called the Eagle hoist, which makes it easier to get in and out of the chair rather than people manual handling me. The only problem is the other end often doesn't have the Eagle hoist. Um, I don't go to the bathroom, so I have to think about a hydration routine, a diet the few days before. I have to write off the first day of the holiday because I don't know what kind of state I'm going to be in when I get there. So I think there's that element of flying is very difficult, but I kind of have persevered through it because I want to go on holiday. I think the second part, linking more to sort of like David's answers and kind of trying to relate, is as well like when you get somewhere, um, you want to get about, and that is even more challenging again with an electric wheelchair. So I guess there's strategies that I do choose. So you can do as much research as you want, but until you get there and experience it, you don't know what you're going to face. So I try and book into a hotel that worst case scenario, if I am stuck in this hotel for the duration of the holiday, I'm going to have a good time. So does it have some good restaurants? Does it have a good like pool? Does it have a bar that I can watch my football team in if it's the football season? Like, am I going to be able to enjoy myself if it's the worst case scenario? The second then part of the strategy is where can I travel from hotel in my wheelchair? Can I go out for a walk? Because you do get cabin fever. So again, I was looking a few years ago to go to a hotel in Greece, but it was in the middle of nowhere and there was no easy taxis. So I kind of ruled it out that, well, I'm going to be stuck in this hotel. Where other places I go, if I can on foot, use the footpaths to go and explore the local area. So the villa that I go to in Spain, for example, it's a 35-minute walk into the city of Denia. It's level paths, there's shops and stuff, so that kind of works. When I go other places, though, we have to hire sometimes an accessible minivan. Believe it or not, the minivan that I just hired for my recent holiday, the cost of two minivans was more than half the cost of the hotel, so it can be very expensive. Other places I've gone, I try and look at
Mm,
public transport, so a bit like Davey. So a lot of the buses in the United States are all fully accessible. So again, big cities, New York, it was actually easier to get around on a bus than it was a taxi. Miami is very similar. So yeah, there's lots of things to take into consideration when you're traveling as someone with a complex disability.
definitely, yeah, I can relate to a lot of that. Yeah, and I think one thing, just a little tip that I found really helpful for wheelchair users, I several years ago bought what's called a porter ramp, which is a foldable little ramp that can hang on the back of your wheelchair. Obviously, if it's on your wheelchair, you're not having to worry about the weight and carrying it and stuff. And like you say, drop curbs are sometimes non-existent in places, or lots of shops may have a single step just to get into, which I've never understood the point of. But having a porter ramp on the back has often meant that I don't have to panic about that because I can just whip it out, put it down, and then hook it back on the back once I've gone up or down the step, which I think is a really helpful thing to do.
One thing I briefly overlooked in that answer is we know from the media that the amount of wheelchairs that are damaged on airplanes every day around the world is absolutely crazy. So another
Mm.
thing that we have to think about and that I do is I've got two wheelchairs. So I've got a backup wheelchair that is only for holidays, so it doesn't impact my work and career if I come back with a broken wheelchair. Doesn't help if you arrive somewhere it's broken. And so to avoid that, I've got the joystick made removable, so I can put that in my hand luggage. I take off any loose item and put it in my hand luggage. I've got signs all over my wheelchair written in three languages that basically say this wheelchair costs this amount of money. It's my legs. Please don't break my legs because I'm on the first flight home if you do. Touch wood, it's been okay, but I think it's only a matter of time before I'm one of the unlucky individuals who ends up with a smashed wheelchair.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I do similar things to you, Ross. I think it's all about just sort of doing the most you can so that you know if something happens, then you've done everything possible to sort of mitigate that. I also have bought sort of like really strong um, sort of straps that I attach to 4 points of my wheelchair so that when they put it in manual, they use those straps to move it rather than pushing and pulling it with their hands because yeah, like I've found that they can just pull an arm off or something if they're trying to do it without those straps. And also, if in the horrible um, concept of them not having a lift to put it in the hold, if they end up trying to lift the wheelchair with four people, I tell them to use those straps because again, then the weight is going through parts that I know can take it rather than them putting on a very not well, a very delicate part of the wheelchair. um, so yeah, I think there's lots of things with regards to transport. Do you have any sort of adaptations, Davey, that you have for the airline? Do you ask to sort of board early or anything like that?
Yeah, I found special assistance has been generally very useful. Some airports are better than others, so I don't have to climb up the stairs in the airplane. That's been very good, and you're either the first one on or the last one on, which has been very useful.
Yeah. Yeah, special assistance is always a good thing to do.
I think there's another, it seems like an obvious tip to give people, but um, your flight duration might say 2 hours or 3 hours, 9 hours, however long it is. I think, as David just mentioned about getting on first or getting off last, if unfortunately you rely on your mobility device being with you and put on the plane and taken off the plane, you probably need to safely add an hour either side of that flight, because that can be realistically how long they put you on in advance and how long you wait at the other end for your mobility device to arrive. So again, if you're not going to the bathroom for 3 hours, actually prepare for 5.
Yeah, definitely a good tip. And so I suppose, yeah, we've spoken a lot about the fact that the amount of research and planning involved in travelling for us is pretty extensive and more than most people. What sort of type of research and planning do you guys put into a trip before you go? So we've spoken about some of it before, but things like accommodation, equipment hire, insurance.
Sure. Well, I have probably got a higher level of mobility to Ross. So my planning is, to be honest, more who I decide to go with. I'm very fortunate that quite a few of my friends have been on board with my kind of crazy travels and don't mind not going where they're going until we reach the airport, for example. So I enjoy taking friends on trips and not actually revealing to them who where we're going until we reach the airport. So I think you could say that my research is more who I want to go with, and fortunately, most of my friends know my level of mobility and know the help I need. One thing I've started to do with friends before we travel is teach them how to pick me up if I've had a fall. Going to different countries, there's also various sorts of terrain in European towns. They got obviously cobblestones somewhere, quite uneven surfaces. So I am more likely to have a fall, especially if I'm traveling. I usually walk maybe slightly longer than I would in my everyday life. So there is that higher falls risk. And so if I'm traveling with people, I'll say, look, just let me get to a position of like kneeling, and then you go under my arm, and then we go one, two, three, push, and then it's up and forward. So just letting people know that that's kind of what I need. Street views are really important. I keep saying how good that is, and also if you're going on like Google Maps and want to find from place A to place B, it actually tells you the rough elevation. And for me, although I can walk some distances,
Mm.
walking any kind of uphill is going to be exponentially more difficult for me. So I'll be researching how, um, how high up and down I'll need to be traveling.
Yeah, some good tips there. And Ross, what about you in terms of sort of other parts of planning that people might not think about as much?
Yeah. So, um, as I've mentioned previously, I've recently, unfortunately, not unfortunately, I've gone to the same place over and over again. And the research I did to get to those places was a long while ago. But actually, for my most recent trip to California, I hadn't been there before. Um, and it was really important that the hotel was going to meet my needs for that period of time. So, one thing I do is I follow a few um, disability travelers and just kind of see the types of places they're staying. A lot of them have got their own sort of blog or channel. So there happened to be a guy, we'll give him a plug, he's got a neuromuscular condition. So a guy called Corey Lee had happened to stay in a hotel in California and done a really good review of it. But what I'd also learned from another friend who I'll remain unnamed because again just kind of like friendliness and don't want to say things, but we both have the similar condition, and he'd recommended a hotel a few years ago for me to stay in Spain. And even though we've got identical conditions, when I got there, I was really disappointed. I was like, this does not meet my needs at all. So I think what I learned from that is even though I'd read this other Corey's chap about this particular hotel in California, I emailed the hotel. I said, "Can you send me pictures? Can you confirm that this is the room you're going to give me?" I get that in blood. So if I turn up and they haven't given me that, I can go, "That's not what we agreed here. So you need to fix this ASAP." So I email the
Definitely.
hotel. I get the research. I do the research. I get pictures. I ask for as much information as possible. Things like the height under the bed. If I'm bringing my hoist with me, so I need to know whether I take my bed raisers with me. Um, Another bit of research, because sometimes research comes through lived experience. So I was away last year in November. My carer that was with me, my PA, she got pneumonia and was rushed into hospital, and I was stranded in a foreign country with no help.
Oh my goodness.
And I cannot tell you um, how like wow that moment. Now, I was there with my parents, but they are 80 and 75, and their ability to provide hands-on care is no longer.
Mm,
So whilst I was there for them to give me a drink and help me pass urine, anything beyond that was like, whoa. I had to fly out another carer, and she took 36 hours. That was the quickest we could get her to arrive, not through her own fault because of logistics of where we were and flights and bookings and travel. But what I learned from that was so I had to cancel a future trip because of that. My carer that was ill had her own insurance policy. I had my own insurance for me and my SMA. But actually, when it came to claiming, because the carers were not named on my insurance policy, they weren't actually covered. So what I've learned moving forward is in terms of like travel, is when I book a holiday now, I need to make sure that my PAs are listed on my travel insurance, because if there's any reason that I have to cancel it, they'll only cover my cost. They won't cover the PA's cost unless they are on your
mm,
policy. Now that also presents a challenge, and I need to do a bit more research on this, is whether I take out an annual policy with everybody who's currently employed with me, or whether I do a trip by trip policy. But that's going to bump the cost up. I also recently had a pacemaker fitted, and that put my insurance up by £1,100. So again, before you go booking a holiday, do the research on the insurance cost. So yeah, that's something I've definitely had to look into and learn. And again, also just things like a bit like Davey said again, if it's a, a venue that or a hotel or a villa where it's in walking distance to places, I will do a bit of Google street mapping to see like where the dropped curbs are and what's in the vicinity of the area, like so I can get out and about. So yeah, things I do.
yeah, definitely. It's a good point about the insurance as well. It's interesting, isn't it? Even though, Ross, you've been travelling for years, there's always new things to come across.
Just
Yeah,
to add to that, yeah, the headline thing I want to say is just because a hotel has a lift doesn't mean it's working. And I've
true.
unfortunately found that out the hard way. Call them up. You have a lift? Is it working?
Definitely. And then one other part of the planning that I think some people might want to know about is about equipment hire. I think some people, I think Ross, like yourself, you take your hoist with you. Personally, I haven't navigated that yet. I still prefer to hire a hoist where I go, purely because of the amount of equipment and suitcases I already have to take on an airplane. I find the concept of lugging around a hoist a little bit too fearful. So a big part of research that I do is around the equipment hire. Most places I have found now, obviously we're talking more like European places and things like America, they do allow you to hire equipment. You can hire different types of hoists, different types of, even air pressure mattresses, things like that. So again, that's something that's always good to consider. Um, if you find the concept of taking all of your equipment with you a bit stressful. So we're sort of coming towards the end now, and we've spoken quite a lot about the challenges that we face and, the sort of barriers we can come across when traveling. But we're three people here that all love to go on holiday and love to travel despite the challenges that we might face. Um, what do you personally gain from traveling, and why is it important to you? Ross, let's go to you first.
Yeah, so I suspect my answer to this is going to be different from David's, and that's what this is all about, right? Perspective. So the most I gain from travel is a break, a recharge, a boost. So as I said, I've just had 3 weeks away. I've literally been back to work a week today, and um, the 3 week break from the normal life has recharged me. Whilst I have been moaning or straight gloating at work this week about jet lag, I definitely feel recharged, refocused, ready to kind of like take on the next few months, put some money away for that next holiday and go away. So for me, the biggest thing is that break, that recharge, that selfishness of, as I said earlier, not having like changeovers, not having admin to do, not having to return a report at work or a return to direct payments. Although actually, when I was away recently, it was payday, so I did have to do payroll while I was on holiday on my laptop.
I
I think
hate it when
actually
that
the other thing,
happens.
yeah, I think actually there was another really good point. So I've got a care team which could be bigger. We're looking at people, but I've got a good care team, some solid people working with me. But also one of my PAs that didn't come away with me got a 3 week break from work, and actually the positive I got from that was she messaged me not long, sort of about 3 or 4 days before I was heading home, saying like, I feel recharged, I feel refreshed, I feel ready to come back to work. I don't feel fatigued either. I feel good to give you the care that you deserve as well. So I think it's actually the looking at not just what do you get from it, what do other people get from you being away. Now that doesn't mean the people that came with me are absolutely knackered, but yeah. So there's yins and yangs to all of these things.
Mm, definitely. And Davey, how about you?
Yes, so I think the more that we travel, the more that we can kind of learn about the world, the more we can share empathy for other people and other cultures. And I think it's so important for everyone to travel. And I think travel can look so different for many people. It can be a break and can be a recharge. But I think to get out of your comfort zone and just break up your days, your weeks, your months with experiencing something outside of your comfort zone can really open your eyes to the world. And I'm just going to give two examples of really positive experiences I've had traveling as a disabled person, because I do think that when I say everyone should travel, I really, really do mean it, especially disabled people. I think the more that the world sees disabled people travel, the more that the world is going to cater to disabled people travelers. Countries are going to realize that. Not only do we need to maybe cater for disabled tourists, but how can we better manage our own disabled people? Because unfortunately, there are countries and governments that don't prioritize that. There are disabled people in unfortunately much worse off countries than the UK that where disabled people just don't have that access. And unfortunately, I have seen a lot of that in some of the countries that I've travelled to. Um, so one experience that I had, I was in Cairo last year at this restaurant, and there was a step in the kind of middle of the restaurant. The restaurant was kind of half inside, half outside, and there was a step, but the color was exactly the same up and down, and kind of that side bit. So I couldn't see it, and lo and behold, I have a huge fall in the middle of this restaurant. Now, Egyptians, super friendly people. I think all over the Middle East, you're going to meet some of the friendliest, most catering towards the disabled people possible. And everyone was so apologetic and helped me up and everything. Which, fair enough. I thought that's a really great thing. But what really got me was a couple of days later, we went back to that restaurant, and there was yellow tape indicating that there was actually a step there. That's when I realised that me going to that restaurant has actually made it more accessible. Another positive experience I had was staying on a farm in Madagascar. So my wife is half Malagasy, and I had the absolute pleasure of spending some time there a couple of years ago. And on this farm, there was this huge staircase up to our bedroom, and I can't really manage stairs at the best of times, but I thought, you know what, that's fine. There was no handrail at all, so I did struggle up, and again, the very catering Malagashi staff that were working there were helping me up and doing the absolute best they could. By the time I woke up in the morning, there was a handrail that had already been fixed, going up and down the staircase, and those are just two examples, and that's just me. That's just one disabled person traveling. Just imagine if like you do get like more people in wheelchairs, more blind people, more deaf people traveling, how much the world is going to open up and see these disabilities, and be more catering towards them. Because I promise that anyone who is disabled that travels now is going to have a much easier experience 10 years from now. But in order for that to happen in 10 years' time, we need to get the ball rolling now. So, if I could have one message for anyone kind of listening who feels that they're too nervous to travel because of their disability, 100% do your research, make sure you are prepared, but just go.
Definitely. Yeah, so true. And I think we could probably have a whole separate podcast talking about what the travel industry could do better for disabled people. But if there's one
Mm-hmm.
thing that you could say that should be better or should be done differently to improve the travel experiences of people living with disabilities, what would you say, Ross?
Can we be cheeky and give two?
Go on then, I'll let you have it.
Okay, so the first one is selfishly, from a wheelchair user point of view, we want to stay in our play seat, we want to stay in our wheelchairs on planes. We want to go to the bathroom so that we can enjoy what we pay for. But I kind of feel that that one is I'm a realist. It's a big challenge. So for me, if I had to give you the one answer right now that we can do today, it's awareness and training. So I've travelled a lot, and a couple of things that continually happen, and you just think there's a little bit of awareness and knowledge and training could make this better. So when we check in, it seems to be they think that anybody in a wheelchair or with a visible disability cannot communicate. So they constantly talk to the people that you're with and not yourself. And then the amount of people that don't realise again that you're on a plane, and if you've got lifted on, that you probably don't have the ability to get out of the seat. So they wonder why you're not eating or not drinking, and they wonder why you're still sat in your seat when everyone else has got off. And I kind of go, how is this not like this is not rocket science. Like a bit of disability awareness training here could go a long way. And that's, I've done that from my point of view. I wonder how many times they give somebody who's blind the menu on a long haul flight and say, "What would you like for dinner?" And he goes, "Well, it's not in Braille. I don't know. Give me a Braille menu." Or how many times they say to somebody who's deaf, they shout at them or something like that. So I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
stuff that could be done to make travel more inclusive. So awareness would be the one thing.
Yeah. Davy?
Hire disabled people. Have disabled people on your staff. Have people doing trial runs of your airports, of your hotel. Have variety of people with different conditions. Do the things that they might be doing. Just government investment. That's what I'd say.
Definitely. Well, it was definitely more than one, but you've been so great to have on as guests. Thank you, guys. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. If you've been inspired to learn more about travelling, there's a variety of resources on our website, including stories and practical information. If you would like to send in any suggestions for future discussions or have any questions following today's chats for our guests, please contact us on podcast@musculardystrophyuk.org. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple to keep updated on new episodes. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to the next time.